Dear friends, I like to talk to you about leadership. There are many leaders in this world, but truly great leaders have one of the following three characteristics. One is having a great dreamer, and they have huge aspirations and they inspire the people to achieve great heights. The other great leader is one with great value systems, and they sometimes lose their life to fight for their values. The other great characteristics of great leaders is being inspirational, and they inspire people into great heights. All of us are in the World War III scenario. The entire world is battling the coronavirus. Many people have actually lost their lives. True leadership is needed at this hour to deliver us, to prevent greater losses to lives and livelihoods, and to deliver us from this major catastrophe. With this in mind, I look back in history to truly inspirational stories of great leaders in the past. These stories are exceptional, as they will certainly inspire us to get over this pandemic in flying colors. All of us are leaders in our own rights. I'm sure we can learn a lot with the great leaders of the past. So let me first present part 1 of the series of leadership in World War III. Great leader that I would like to talk to you about is one of the greatest that India has ever known, that is Emperor Ashoka. He ruled India 2,200 years ago. He was the grandson of Chandragupta Maurya, a great emperor himself. He had conquered almost the entire India, and with his able administrator Chanakya was able to capture most of India to bring it under its control. Young Emperor Ashoka was a fierce ruler as well. He ruled this country 30 years. At the end of the 13th year, he bid war on Kalinga, the present-day Orissa, and wanted to capture this. This battle of Kalinga was fought on the river Daya. This war was a particularly violent one, with many people being killed and many being injured. The suffering was immense, both on the battlefield as well as in the city of Kalinga, where many people were orphaned. The emperor was filled with remorse to see this enormous suffering that he had caused. He no longer was a fierce king. He became a benevolent one. He took to Dharma and began to follow Buddhism, which was one of the important religions at that time. Buddha had lived 200 years before Emperor Ashoka. With this Buddhism and with his Dharma in mind, Emperor Ashoka was able to achieve peace and tranquility. This was not all. The emperor wanted this aspect of being able to live happily to be taken to all his citizens throughout India. Imagine being able to do this 2,200 years ago. And he carved his message on huge pieces of stone called stupas. Each stupa was about 15 to 30 meters in height and weighed about 50 tons. The emperor created 84,000 of these stupas, and these stupas were dragged to every aspect of his country, far and wide, and they were instilled in various places in his kingdom. Many of his emissaries were asked at particular time to read the message of Dharma to the people. And his hope was that his communication of peace and happiness should reach the entire kingdom and all its people. And he achieved this by this. Now his message spread far and wide, and Buddhism spread to almost the entire Southeast Asia because of the efforts of Emperor Ashoka. Mass communication was so important to the emperor and to instill this happiness in his citizens. Just imagine today, communication is so important. Unfortunately, we are plagued with one major problem, and that is fake news and false information. I'm sure there were no false stupas during the period of Emperor Ashoka. I think it is very important that we have good information to all our subjects to have happiness, and we must try to get rid of fake and false informations. Dear friends, the next group of leaders that I would like to talk to you about is of the Chola dynasty. Great emperors like Rajaraja Chola and his son Rajendra Chola. These emperors ruled India about 1000 years ago. This was probably the longest dynasty in the entire world. They ruled for over 300 years. They had a very strong army and conquered most of India from the river Tungabhadra downwards to the southernmost part of India. They were very fierce warriors. At the same time, they were also connoisseurs of fine art and architecture. In fact, these flourished during this period about 1000 years ago. Great temples such as the Brihadishwara temple in Tanjavur were built, and this is indeed a marvel of architecture. These warriors and leaders were not happy with just being in India alone. They developed a huge naval fleet. Just imagine having a naval fleet 1000 years ago. And they traveled along the Bay of Bengal, into the Strait of Malacca, and reached even China. They conquered on their way Indonesia, where it was called Sri Vijaya at that time, and even parts of Cambodia. During their conquests, they spread their knowledge, and they taught the people about their culture and architecture. This certainly inspired the Khmer kingdom, which was in force in Cambodia at that time. This was a very powerful empire, the Khmer Empire. The Cholas certainly inspired the Khmers, possibly helped them, and to build huge Hindu temples in the Angkor Wat temple in Cambodia, as well as the Prambanan temple in Indonesia, which was also a Hindu temple which was built during this period. These are indeed architectural marvels. The Angkor Wat temple, for instance, covers about 500 acres and is probably the biggest structure in the whole world. This no doubt was inspired by the Chola emperors. Because the Angkor Wat temple is based on the mandala theory, that is with 4 entrances, and there were gobras in these corners, very much similar to what we see in temples today in southern India. Hinduism was practiced at that time, and many of the bas reliefs in this temple have Ramayana and the various Hindu gods on the walls, and inscriptions were also present. The same is in the Prambanan temple, Indonesia, which is probably the biggest Hindu temple in Southeast Asia. So, not only did they teach architecture, they also taught fine arts to these people, and also how to govern their state. And this was followed by the Khmer kingdom. These great emperors also had emissaries in China to do trade in the southern part of China at those periods. So the great quality of these great emperors was not only being courageous, but also being great teachers of architecture and fine arts at that particular time. Such glorious emperors and fabulous times. These emperors were certainly far ahead of their times. Emperor Ashoka can be called the king of communications. I wish Emperor Ashoka was alive today and in charge of the entire media in this world. All of us will be assured of clean, authentic, and positive information at all times. Wouldn't that be wonderful? The majestic and dynamic Chola emperors set such high goals for themselves. Just hear them say, we have just completed the mighty Brihadishwara temple. Now let's go across the seas to our friends the Khmers in Cambodia and help them build the Angkor Wat temple. And they completed this temple for them as well. Such was the achievements and goal setting of these mighty Chola emperors. If they can do it, Certainly, we can do it today in modern times. We should be surrounded with good information and set high goals for ourselves as we come out of this pandemic.